Blue tongue disease. We got Katie Cheeks, Taylor Souter, and Elizabeth Flatt presenting it to you. Pay attention, put your seatbelts on. It's gonna be a bumpy ride.
Okay. Blue tongue virus, also known as BVT, is an infectious, non-contagious virus. It can be found in both domestic and wild ruminants. Sheep are most susceptible and show the most clinical signs. Within sheep, European fine wool breeds and mutton breeds are the most affected. Cattle and goats usually have only subclinical cases. It can be found in many parts of the world, but is most commonly found in temperate regions. There are 26 serotypes of the virus, and the main mechanism of transmission is through biting midges. It can also be spread from animal to animal through semen, the placenta, or blood-contaminated surgical tools. The disease has the potential to have a large economic impact due to decreased production, restricted trade, increased cost of care, and affected reproductive capability.
So we have a bunch of symptoms. Most of them are asymptomatic. Basically, you have a fever, you'll have crusty and mucopurulent nasal discharge, so it just gets all, like when you have a cold and you get all crusties around your nose, it's snot and stuff, yeah, you get a lot of that. You salivate a ton. There's lesions in and around the mouth, kind of painful. You'll definitely notice them. Erosions and ulcerations of the mucosal membranes, so anything that has mucous membranes in it, it's going to be like ulcerating and stuff. So your tongue also swells, and that often protrudes from the mouth, so it kind of sticks out like you can see in the bottom right picture. Your tongue is swollen. Also, dummy lambs will be birthed with females that contracted that are pregnant, and they die shortly after birth. Or they have an abortion, and yeah, there's no babies. Also, there's lameness due to muscle necrosis and inflammation of the coronary bands. So they can't really walk, they're having trouble. It's painful on their feet with the coronary band and everything. The hooves slough, so as if the coronary band doesn't hurt enough, they're losing the covering. They also have dyspnea and hyperemic muzzle, lips, and ears. Usually, if they survive the blue tongue disease and it goes away kind of deal, they lose their wool 3 to 4 weeks after the recovery, and death can occur, but it's pretty uncommon. For cattle and goats, it's usually subclinical. Lesions around the nose and teeth, kind of in the picture upper right. The oral and dermal ulcers as well, so ulcers are a big thing in blue tongue. Their inflamed coronary bands are also in cattle and goats, so they have a hard time walking. It's painful. There's thick skin folds in cervical areas, so around the neck. Temporary sterility in bulls. Your bulls aren't going to be able to produce any babies because obviously sperm isn't very sterile. So it also has a decreased conception rate. This kind of goes hand in hand. Sterility. Cows aren't conceiving. Yeah. Also, you have abortions of pregnant cows. Dummy cows can also be birthed, and post-infections equal break-in hoofs, which leads to foot rot.
Prevalence. Specific numbers of reported cases for the U.S. were unavailable, but there were documented instances of the disease in 2012, which affected sheep, goats, cattle, and wildlife. For an example with specific numbers of reported cases, we can look at the recent outbreak from 2008 to 2013 in Greece that had a total number of 1,485 reported cases, and that was cattle, sheep, and goats. In this outbreak, 2.7% of exposed sheep, 4.5% of exposed cattle, and 1.7% of exposed goats were affected. There are 5 serotypes identified in the U.S. out of a total of 26. The disease was first identified in South Africa, but most animals in South Africa have only subclinical infections. It is most commonly found in temperate climates where the higher temperatures permit biting midges to survive practically year-round, and the virus can incubate within the body. For this reason, blue tongue is most common within the southern and western regions of the U.S. However, it has been becoming more prevalent in colder regions, such as the most recent outbreak in Europe, and this is thought to be due to global warming.
All right, causative agent. So, blue tongue virus is an RNA orbivirus, which means that it's similar to other diseases such as African horse sickness. It can be transmitted by biting midges, an insect of the genus Culicoides. They're also known as no-see-ums. That's more common. They're smaller than mosquitoes, but they bite in the same way. The systemic effects of blue tongue Blue tongue virus targets the liver, spleen, and lymph nodes. Virus replication is thought to be highest in the vascular endothelial cells and agranular leukocytes. The tonsils and skin are the two organ systems that best support blue tongue virus replication. Blue tongue virus is transmitted from dam to offspring in utero. It can be transmitted through the ingestion of the placenta from an infected animal. This is less common, but is considered direct transmission. Also, the insect vector, the midges. Semen of bulls currently infected with the virus can also transmit the disease. It's less common now because all bull semen to be exported is tested for blue tongue virus. Embryo transfer is another common way. If you have a dam that is affected with blue tongue virus, any embryos collected from her can transmit blue tongue. And finally, there have been a few reported cases of a contaminated vaccine that could also transmit the disease to other species such as dogs. Blue tongue virus is diagnosed with an ELISA test. You can also determine them with complement fixation, and blood tests or tissue samples from a viremic animal can be collected and have a PCR run on them. You can also take spleen or brain tissue from aborted fetuses, and this will often show traces of blue tongue virus if that was the reason for abortion. Blue tongue virus, the best treatment with any disease is always prevention. Sheep can be kept indoors at dusk during peak migration of midges, so probably more in the summertime. Vaccines do exist, but each serotype of the virus merits a different vaccine, so it's really difficult, kind of like a cure for the common cold isn't really that possible at this point. There's only a recombinant vaccine at this time, so using it on pregnant animals is discouraged. Sterilization of the area helps, but does not prevent the transmission of blue tongue virus. Insect control through organophosphates. Organophosphates are particularly potent against midges, so you should see a decrease in blue tongue virus transmission. If you do have a case of blue tongue virus, you should notify the vet. State and federal vets should eventually be called in so that you can have that looked after and we can prevent epidemics.
The incubation period of the virus is 4 to 6 days. It is commonly fatal in sheep with high mortality rates that could possibly reach 70%. Sheep are viremic for up to 50 days and cattle for 77. Due to the extended period of time in which the virus remains in the cow system, the disease is able to persist through the winter months and be taken up again by the biting midge in the spring. Then the biting midge can spread the blue tongue to other hosts.
Let's talk moolah. Alright, so when you have a sick animal, obviously you're going to lose a lot of money depending on exactly what the virus is. Since we're talking about blue tongue, you're going to experience weight loss, reduced milk yield, abortion, associated vet costs, cost of prevention, cost of testing, and decreased trade due to the tight trade regulations. All that being said, you're losing money. Some examples are in 2000 to 2001, studies show that Italy had 48,000 die and 263,000 diseased sheep and goats. In 2001 to 2002, Italy, the same place, studies show that 73,000 died and 251,000 diseased sheep and goats. So there was an increase in the amount that died, but less got the disease. 2007, France, Netherlands, and Germany all got an experiment on the research side, and $1.4 billion was lost in France, 85 million in Netherlands, and overall 20,000 farms, 35,000 cattle, sheep, and goat were affected in Germany. But let's see what would happen if Barry Sheep Enterprise got hit with the blue tongue virus. We have a total of 51 ewes, 3 rams, and 64 lambs. So before I can fully calculate the amount of loss Barry would see, we need to have this little disclaimer stated. The only blue tongue vaccine is for the stereotype 10. However, there are a total of 5 strains native to the U.S., 2, 10, 11, 13, and 17. There is a lack of information on the prevalence of each stereotype on an individual basis, let alone a percentage for a total in the USA. Therefore, for the purpose of this example, I am using 2% as a BTV prevalence in the United States and simply taking 1/5 out of the 2% to distinguish the remaining strains possible for contraction post-vaccination. Alright, with that being said, the products affected would be showing lambs at fair for prize, money, meat, and because wethers and lambs go into meat, and then the selling, breeding, ewes. We wouldn't really be able to get as much money for the breeding ewes because their weight would, they would more than likely abort their babies or have dummy lambs. The wethers would have a decrease in weight, and the lambs, they're either dummy or dead, so that you can't get money for that. We're also going to focus on lamb meat, since there's 51 ewes, and we're going to say about 2.5 lambs on average are birthed with each ewe. And let's say they all go to the market, you'll have $21,675 with $2.80 per pound. Let's say that 2.04 lambs die, so roughly about 2. You would lose approximately $346.80. The vet bill would be no cost, and vaccination would be $39.98 because per vial it's 50 doses, but we have 54 sheep, so we just missed the cutoff. One thing I didn't incorporate would be if we did get the blue virus, how quickly it would transmit to all of it. I took the 2% as in the range of the entire United States, not necessarily in the one farm that gets contracted, how quickly it'll spread. But in general, this would be the cost of the Berry Sheep enterprise.
In conclusion, blue tongue virus is detrimental to ruminant livestock production through loss of product. Reproductive issues include dummy offspring, abortions, decreased reproductive efficiency in the females, and sterility in males. The blue tongue virus is transmissible through improperly washed embryos and in a viremic animal's semen. Also, as we talked about earlier, through insect vectors that can be controlled with organophosphates. With no available treatment, prevention is really the only mechanism of disease control. At this time, treatments are ineffective due to the numerous serotypes that are currently out there with no treatment.